It was the quiet kind of afternoon that only small towns seem to understand. The scent of sun-baked concrete, mowed grass, and faint barbecue smoke mixed in the air like a half-forgotten song. Birds chirped lazily, clouds drifted like idle minds, and in the middle of it all, Cal stood under the rusted water tower of Briarton, Kansas, flicking sunflower seed shells at a dented soda can. He wasn't much to look at, not if you judge by the standards of big cities or fancy interstellar war dramas. Just a lanky 23-year-old with shaggy brown hair, sun-weathered skin, and eyes that looked like they'd seen a few too many hard winters. His shirt bore the faded logo of the town's long-defunct high school football team, and his jeans had more stories in the stains than a library had books. Most days, he did odd jobs, fixing engines, helping at the local scrapyard, occasionally bailing out the county sheriff when his cruiser broke down. He liked silence. Preferred it, really. After all, it gave a man time to think. Not that he had much use for that lately. Until the sky changed. It started as a single vibration in his chest. Not sound, not light, something deeper. Like the earth itself had shivered in anticipation. Cal looked up, blinking against the bright sun. That's when he saw it. A black smear cutting across the blue, fast and low like a blade drawn from a sheath. Then thunder, but not the kind that rolls in from the west in storm season. This was wrong. A mechanical howl, layered and discordant, like it was sung by machines older than language. The bird stopped. Every dog in town went crazy. Power flickered in the stores lining Main Street. A car alarm howled before giving up with a final, mournful wail. Cal squinted as the smear resolved into shapes. 3 of them. Ships. Not planes. Not drones. And not human. The lead craft was massive, matte black, shaped like a spearhead with glowing blue veins crawling across its hull. The 2 flanking it were smaller, sleeker, armed with what looked like living weapons, tentacled coils twitching on their underbellies. They didn't hover. They loomed. He reached for his phone, only to find no signal, no power, not even a flicker. A kid on a bike skidded to a stop beside him, mouth open like he'd forgotten how to use it. Others gathered, farmers, shopkeepers, kids on skateboards, the mayor with his mustard-stained tie, all staring upward as the ships began to descend. Then came the voice. Not broadcast, not heard, felt. Attention inhabitants of Terra 3. This world has been selected for harmonious integration into the Chlorothi Dominion. Your resistance is mathematically irrelevant. Do not struggle. You will not suffer if you comply. The words punched straight into every skull at once. Too many syllables, too much meaning, compressed into raw instruction. Cal stumbled, head pounding, blood pounding harder. He tasted copper. The kid beside him vomited. Someone screamed. And then, silence again. Cal's first thought was an old one. Well, shit. The town square erupted into chaos. People ran, tripped, screamed names, bolted for basements, some just stood frozen. The lead ship unfolded like an opening wound, a ramp descending with elegant, predatory grace. From it stepped the first of the invaders, taller than any man, 4-legged but walking upright, skin like obsidian glass, eyes recessed and glowing violet, armor fused to flesh in a way that suggested either biological engineering or a disdain for comfort. It didn't carry a weapon. It was one. Cal saw the thing scan the area with a gesture. The 2 smaller ships peeled off in opposite directions, scattering glider-like drones that zipped away in synchronized formation. Something primal awoke in his bones, some ancient instinct, the kind that didn't come from any survival manual or training regimen. He ducked. Seconds later, a plasma beam tore through the space where his head had been, slagging the old vending machine beside him into a molten mess. They weren't here to negotiate. Cal rolled, grabbed the rusted crowbar leaning against the base of the tower, the same one old Joe used to pry open jam scrap bins, and ran. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a genius or a superhero, but he'd grown up on stories. Stories told in garages, passed through generations, etched into muscle memory and family pride. His granddad had fought in the Gulf. His great-grandma had driven ammo trucks in the Pacific Theater. His dad? just a mechanic. Same as Cal. But all of them shared one unshakable trait. When the world came unglued, they didn't ask permission to act. The alien advanced through the square like it owned gravity. It reached toward a huddled group of civilians, a mother, a gas station attendant, the sheriff. Something on its arm spun and clicked. Cal didn't think. He swung. The crowbar cracked against the alien's head with a sound like glass hitting a meat locker. It reeled, stumbled. The thing wasn't invincible. Not even close. He pressed his advantage, slamming the iron bar again and again. With a horrible squelch and a shudder, the creature dropped. Gasps rose around him. Cal stood over the body, panting, crowbar red-hot in his grip. The moment stretched. Then someone, maybe the mayor, whispered, "Did he just kill it?" More importantly, the ship seemed to notice. A new sound erupted overhead. Urgent, discordant, high-pitched. The air shimmered. Shapes moved within the ship, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. A second ramp extended. The invaders were mobilizing. Cal wiped blood, alien blood, off his cheek and turned to the others. "They'll be back." The kid on the bike looked up. "What do we do?" Cal looked at the crowbar, at the town, at the sky. He grinned. "We show him what 300 million angry humans with gardening tools and bad tempers can do." He didn't know it then, but in that moment, under the shadow of the alien ship, crowbar in hand, Cal Tucker became the spark that would ignite Earth's shortest and most humiliating invasion. The town of Brighton wasn't known for much. No strategic value, no military base, not even a decent diner anymore since the fire last winter. And yet, it became ground zero for the shortest interstellar war in recorded history. Cal didn't ask for leadership. He didn't even want it. But something about stabbing an alien invader in the skull with a crowbar made people listen when you spoke. "They're splitting up," he said, crouching behind the mayor's Buick as alien drones buzzed overhead. "Trying to divide us." Beside him was Sheriff Denise Alvarez, whose last real emergency had been a goat getting stuck in the post office. She clutched her ancient service revolver like it might still matter. Behind her, a dozen townsfolk, some armed with tools, others with nothing but fear, waited for orders. They looked to Cal. He spat blood onto the asphalt. "We're not dividing. We're going full Kansas." No one asked what that meant. The alien ship overhead pulsed again, releasing a low boom like a heart made of dying stars. From a second ramp poured troops, gangly, jet-black creatures with too many joints and no visible mouths. Their limbs folded and unfolded in sickeningly fluid ways, their armor warping with every step like it wasn't attached but grown. The Dominion had expected compliance. Not this. Not resistance. Not rage. One of the drones swooped low, firing a bolt of emerald plasma that vaporized half the newspaper stand and left a molten hole in the sidewalk. "Cal," and Alvarez ducked behind the smoking Buick. "Okay," she muttered. "What's the plan?" Cal peeked around the bumper. "You ever drive a combine?" "What?" "No." "Perfect. You're on the left flank. Jerry's got the fire axes. Lisa and Marvin will hit the hardware store for propane tanks. We got about 20 minutes before they surround the whole square." Sheriff Alvarez blinked. "You're serious? They think we're weak. Think we're backwater. Hell, they probably don't even know what a deep fryer bomb is. That's our edge." An engine sputtered to life somewhere down the block. Bobby Jenkins, the tow truck guy, came barreling up Main in his rusted flatbed, grill lined with fencing spikes and brake lights blinking Morse code. "Where do you want me, boss?" he hollered. Cal just pointed, right down their throats. The battle began not with precision strikes or orbital bombardments, but with duct tape, rage, and hillbilly ingenuity. Propane tanks, strapped to wheelbarrows, rolled into alien lines like medieval siege weapons. Drones were lassoed midair by ranchers on ATVs. And Bobby's tow truck? It plowed into the enemy formation like a charging bull, smashing chitin and composite with equal fury. The aliens regrouped, their ranks forming an eerie, synchronized wall. They deployed something new, tall tripedal machines, humming with sickly green energy, which began to disintegrate cover and flesh with beam pulses. Cal grabbed a bucket of nails and hurled them into the path of the beam. The makeshift shrapnel reacted violently, creating a cascade of sparks and a high-pitched shriek as the machines overloaded. "Rust and iron," he muttered. "You are allergic." Alvarez ducked beside him again. Her face was bleeding, but her eyes were steel. "We're holding them for now." Cal shook his head. "No, we're confusing them. There's a difference." He was right. The Dominion didn't understand this kind of warfare. Guerrilla tactics weren't in their models. Improvised weapons, psychological warfare, meme-based coordination, it didn't compute. They were used to crushing advanced but orderly civilizations. Humanity? We were chaos in denim and cowboy boots. From the rooftops, paint cans filled with gasoline and screws rained down. A loudspeaker somewhere blared a country metal remix of Ride of the Valkyries. A retired science teacher named Mrs. Lindholm had managed to rig a Tesla coil to fry the invaders' communications for half the town square. Then came the broadcast again. Statistical deviation exceeds 400%. Resistance is illogical. Cease. You are contaminating the probability stream. Cal stood atop the mangled husk of one of the legged war machines, panting and bruised, but still upright. He spat into the comms node. "Welcome to Earth, asshole." Suddenly, a high-pitched whine cut through the air. The main ship above began charging something massive. A glowing red core extended from its underbelly, casting long shadows over the battlefield. This wasn't suppression anymore. This was eradication. "They're going to nuke the whole block," Sheriff Alvarez said grimly. "No," Cal said, thinking. "They're going to make an example. Can we stop it? Not with crowbars." A voice crackled in Cal's earpiece. He didn't even realize someone had restored signal. "This is Sergeant Ari Mandel, U.S. Space Guard. We've got satellites tracking heat signatures and high-outmo weapons. We see your position. Reinforcements ETA 2 hours." Cal didn't even flinch. "We'll be dead in 20 minutes. A pause. Then Mandel's voice again, quiet and grim. "Then die loud." Cal clicked off the comm. "All right," he said, turning to the battered town defenders. "They're about to light us up like a Christmas ham." Someone in the back coughed. "So what now?" He looked around. At the oil-stained parking lot. The blood. The singed American flags and ruined soda machines. He could see the fear in their eyes. Children, veterans, clerks, farmers, and behind it, something stronger. Resolve. "What now?" Cal said, lifting the crowbar again. "Now we show them what it means to pick a fight with the one species in the galaxy dumb enough to fight after losing." He moved fast. Alvarez rallied the others. The propane wheelbarrows were upgraded. A junkyard hover engine was salvaged and wired into a hot-wired bulldozer. Every drone brought down was repurposed, welded into battering rams or booby traps. Every alien body was studied, poked, prodded, understood. The Dominion had come with a script. Earth tore it up and rewrote it in duct tape and blood. But they didn't know what humanity had hidden up its sleeve. As the ship's core began pulsing harder, drawing energy from the clouds themselves, the townsfolk gathered in what remained of the courthouse ruins, positioned around something Cal had quietly been assembling in the background, a rigged alien power cell. He'd never seen anything like it, but intuition and a lot of tinkering told him it wasn't designed to explode, which meant he could make it really explode. The timer on the device ticked down, 90 seconds, then 60, then 30. He gave the order. Everyone scatter. People ran. Alvarez stayed. "You going with it?" she asked him, eyes narrowed. Cal shook his head. "Nah, just wanted to see if it'd work." And then, boom. The courthouse erupted in a burst of blue-white fury. A perfect imitation of a small-scale singularity. Not enough to take down the main ship, but enough to cripple its firing core. Above them, the belly of the Dominion vessel sparked, coughed, and cracked. Sirens howled. The ship listed, dipping sharply as its stabilizer struggled. Drones fell from the sky, twitching. Alien troops shrieked in confusion. The town erupted in cheers. But Cal wasn't celebrating. He was already looking skyward, because deep in the clouds above the failing flagship, more shadows were descending. And these were bigger. Title: The One Who Knows Our Name. The clouds split like torn silk. Something immense and ancient descended, not with the whir of engines, but with the reverberating hush of presence. The Dominion ship, already wounded, panicked. Its stabilizers failed entirely. The vessel pitched sideways in the air, shedding drones like metal rain. The townsfolk looked up and froze. It wasn't just one ship. There were three. Enormous vessels shaped like obsidian wings, matte black against the daylight, unervingly silent. No lights, no broadcast, no declaration of peace or war. Just watching. Sheriff Alvarez stood next to Cal, her face pale. Friends of yours? Cal shook his head slowly. No, but they're not Dominion either. The largest of the ships made no move to land. Instead, a single beam of silver light arced down from its hull. Precise, targeted, piercing the Dominion mothership's damaged core. There was no explosion, no flames, just a sudden, total collapse. Like the ship had imploded from the inside, turning into a thin dust cloud that faded into the wind, erased from reality as though it had never existed. Silence, the kind that presses on your chest like gravity. Then a voice, not over speakers, not in the air, inside Cal's head. We did not come for them. We came for you, child of iron. Cal staggered, grabbing the edge of a mailbox for support. What did you say? Alvarez turned sharply. What's wrong? Someone's talking to me, Cal muttered. In my head. You turned the tide of a battle you should not have survived. You awakened a device older than your star. You touched something sacred with grease on your hands. Cal blinked, remembering the Dominion power cell he had tinkered with. It had hummed for him, reacted, almost responded. Who are you? He whispered. There was no answer, but the center ship opened. It didn't hatch like a Dominion vessel. It unfolded like a blooming flower, revealing a circular platform descending slowly to the town square. It touched down with barely a whisper of displaced air. The metallic petals withdrew, and standing there, alone, was a being unlike anything they'd seen. She was tall, almost elven in proportion, cloaked in flowing metal fabric that shimmered between colors. Her skin was starlight gray, and her eyes they held galaxies. She radiated no heat, no threat, only an impossibly deep understanding. Cal stepped forward as if pulled. Behind him, Bobby whispered, "Is she a god?" No one laughed. The being looked directly at Cal and spoke aloud this time, her voice resonant, echoing like temple bells. "You have invoked the protocol of inheritance." Cal's heart pounded. "I don't know what that means." "You will." She stepped closer. "What you did here was not chance. The artifacts you touched are not of this galaxy, and you are not entirely human." The crowd gasped. Alvarez raised her weapon slightly. "Hey, you back off. He's ours." The woman turned to her, unthreatened. "Yes, he is Earth's, but also more." Cal felt something shift in his skull. Memories? Dreams? No, fragments. Visions. Of stars moving backward. Of metallic halls and beings with 3 hearts, whispering over cradles. He saw a planet made of crystal and heard a lullaby sung in a language that tasted like cinnamon and copper. He dropped to his knees. What are you doing to me?" "I'm unlocking you," she said gently. "You're hurting him," Alvarez shouted. "No," Cal gasped. "She's not." Because in that moment, the world snapped into place. Not fully, but enough. He saw schematics in his mind. The Dominion ship's inner workings. The folding engines. Weak points. He remembered how he'd known what wires to cut. Why the power core had sung to him. He hadn't guessed. He had remembered. She knelt beside him, her voice quiet now. "Your real name is not Cal. It is Kao Rin, last spark born of the Aethery, sent to Earth for protection after the extinction." Cal blinked. "I'm not just human. You were raised as one. Your biology is hybrid, but your mind, your spark, is Aethery. That's why the Dominion couldn't predict you. Why your chaos broke their algorithms. You are an anomaly, a forgotten god among apes." The words were too big, too heavy, but they fit. "I just want to fix things," Cal whispered. "I was a mechanic. And now," she said, rising to her full height, "you are the last architect." Behind them, her ship shifted. The town square trembled, And slowly, impossibly, a structure began to emerge from beneath the earth, revealed not by excavation, but by phasing. A tower. Alien, elegant, embedded in Brighton all along, but out of sync with reality until he activated it. The townsfolk backed away, shielding their eyes. Cal stumbled to his feet. "What is that?" She looked at him with something like awe. "It is your inheritance. The final bastion of the E3. A beacon, a vault, a weapon, whatever you make it." He turned, gazing at the impossible architecture now rising from his hometown soil. "I didn't ask for this. No chosen one ever does." He swallowed hard. "So what now? I take your ship, go fight aliens across the stars." She shook her head slowly. "No, the Dominion will not come again. They fear anomalies now. You broke their pattern. You gave Earth a statistical identity, and they won't risk the unknown. Then why are you here?" She hesitated, and for the first time, seemed uncertain. "Because, Kael'Rin, we were not the only ones who noticed what you did. There are older forces, watching, stirring, and one of them has begun to move." A cold wind swept across the town. The sky darkened, not from clouds, but from shadows without source. Above them, space itself seemed to shimmer. Not warp, not bend, but flinch. And in that moment, Cal realized the war with the Dominion was never the real story. It was just a spark. Title: The War That Never Was. The shadows deepened, yet no clouds passed the sun. Birds fled. Dogs whimpered. Somewhere, a traffic light flickered endlessly between green and red, unnoticed by the silent watchers below. Above Brighton, the sky fractured, not visually, not physically, but spiritually, like something ancient had turned its eye toward Earth. Kael'Rin stood at the base of the newly risen tower, breath shallow, sweat running down his back. The E3 emissary stood beside him, her gaze locked on the sky, her face calm but tight. "What is it?" Cal asked. She didn't answer. Not at first. And then she said, softly, something that shouldn't be awake. Behind them, Sheriff Alvarez rallied the townsfolk. Bobby was trying to patch together a makeshift defense with a salvaged Dominion drone core, while Old Man Hensley aimed his hunting rifle uselessly toward the sky, muttering, "I seen a lot, but this ain't natural." Above them, the clouds parted, but what emerged wasn't a ship. It was a presence, not a being in a suit of armor, not a sentient mind, no language, no code, just force, older than law, hungrier than war. The E3 emissary knelt. This was sealed before the first Dominion crawl, before we even charted stars. It has no name because it consumes names. Cal staggered backward. "You're saying we woke something worse than the Dominion?" She nodded, her voice cracking for the first time. "You were supposed to light a beacon. Instead, you lit a flare, and the Null Star saw it. All across the world, sensitive equipment failed. Telescopes pointed at the anomaly went blind. AI systems froze mid-cycle. Even orbiting satellites sent back nothing but static and a sound that translated to a single phrase. Return the architect." The Dominion had fled after a 3-hour invasion attempt. But this thing had waited 3 eons. The sky above twisted into a spiral of impossible geometry, each shape folding into the next in defiance of physics. It wasn't descending. It was coalescing, from every direction at once. "Can we stop it?" Cal asked. The emissary looked at him, and for the first time, something like fear glittered in her galaxy eyes. "If you still believe you're only human, no." He clenched his fists. "I'm not just human." She stepped back. "Then claim your tower." Cal turned to the structure behind him. The walls shimmered like crystal, circuitry running through stone veins. It recognized him, welcomed him. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a floating console and a chair that hovered, waiting. He approached it, trembling. Inside, the air pulsed. He sat. The instant he did, the chair adjusted to him, nanofibers winding up his spine, syncing with his heartbeat. Lights bloomed. Languages whispered. Symbols he'd never learned poured into his mind and settled like childhood memories. "Kael'Rin," the tower spoke, "you may activate Defense Protocol Omega-1." "What does that do?" It will burn the presence from this system. Cal paused. An Earth. Silence. Then, probability of total planetary damage. 97.6%. Cal cursed. That's not a defense. That's extinction. The emissary's voice came faintly into the chamber. The E3 designed our weapons for desperation, not mercy. The null star was closer now. The sky no longer resembled Earth's sky. It looked like a wound in space. And from it, tendrils extended downward, black, pulsing with absence, stripping color from the air as they approached. The people outside screamed as the ground shook. "I won't destroy Earth to stop this," Cal whispered. "Alternate action required." And then, an idea. It didn't come from the tower. It came from his human side. "Can I reroute the tower's energy into a signal?" "Possible." "Warning. This action will collapse the tower permanently." "I don't care." The system hesitated. Then slowly, a diagram formed, a swirling map of the known and unknown universe, and a trajectory forming from Brighton outward. "What are you doing?" the emissary asked, running into the chamber. "I'm sending a message," Cal said, sweat pouring down his face. "A counterpattern. Something to confuse the null star." "Confuse it?" "Yeah. I'm going to hit it with the one thing it can't calculate." "What's that?" He met her eyes. "Hope," she gasped. Cal slammed his hands down on the console. And suddenly, across the tower, across every screen, every device, every frequency on Earth, a voice rang out. His voice. "To all who hear this, this is Earth. We are small. We are messy. But we don't kneel. We don't run. And we sure as hell don't go quiet." The null star halted mid-descent. "Yeah, that's right," Cal said, stepping out of the chair, now glowing white-hot. "You don't get to unmake us. We just got here." The tower surged. The signal punched into the sky. Across the galaxy, ancient machines in forgotten temples activated. Hidden archives blinked awake. Old enemies stirred. And most terrifying of all, others began to answer. The null star recoiled. The pattern broke. It had waited to consume a fragile, conquered world. It had expected the Dominion's leftovers. What received instead was a chorus of awakening. The presence fragmented. The sky healed. The tower cracked, then crumbled, but slowly, gently, as if bowing. The platform Cal stood on lowered him to the ground just as the first rays of untainted sunlight returned to Brighton. The emissary helped him down, her expression unreadable. "You challenged a being that predates death," she whispered. He smiled faintly, exhausted. "Yeah, with a wrench and a homemade signal. You could have died. I still might." Then they both turned and saw the townsfolk. Safe, staring, not in fear, but in awe. Sheriff Alvarez holstered her weapon. "Well, I'll be damned, kid. You scared off the end of the universe." Cal leaned against a lamppost, every cell in his body aching. "Didn't do it alone." "No," the emissary said quietly. "But without you, Earth would have burned." He looked to the horizon, to the stars. "They'll come again," he said. "Maybe not the Dominion, but something else will. Something worse." "Yes," she agreed. "And next time, we'll be ready." Section 5. Resolution. Title: When the Light Returns. The world didn't cheer. Not right away. There were no fireworks, no parades, no galactic news crews descending on Brighton with flashing lights and clickbait headlines. Instead, there was quiet. Deep, sacred quiet. For 3 days, the sky remained unusually clear, as if the clouds themselves were afraid to return. The air carried a slight, static charge. Some said they still saw shapes at the edge of the stars when they stared too long. But Earth had survived. More importantly, it had been noticed. Cal sat on the tailgate of Bobby's truck, boots dangling in the dust, a half-empty bottle of root beer in hand. His old overalls were filthy again, streaked with ash and grease from what remained of the tower. His knuckles were bandaged. His eyes were tired. The mechanic in him felt annoyed that the alien console had shorted exactly like a human microwave. The emissary stood beside him in silence, her pale hands clasped behind her back, expression unreadable. Her name, Cal had finally learned, was Sayraya, a name that, in her tongue, meant something between she who remembers and the one who waited too long. So, Cal said finally, taking a sip. Any idea what we actually did? Sarai exhaled slowly. You forced the galaxy to pause. And listen, that is not a small thing. No one's come to visit. They will. Eventually. Friends or enemies? Sarai gave him a ghost of a smile. That depends on how you answer the next knock. Bobby walked over, dragging a metal crate and looking more tired than Cal had ever seen. You two want to help me fix the generator? The EMP fried half the town's systems. Also, old man Hensley thinks he's been possessed by star wisdom. Keeps talking about space goats. Cal snorted. That sounds like Tuesday. You nearly blew up the world, man, Bobby said, half joking. You get one Tuesday off. They worked together in that easy rhythm of old friends, patching lines, rerouting power, jury-rigging a Dominion drone core into a solar inverter with a laughably unsafe fuse. Cal couldn't believe this was his life again. But it wasn't, not really. The town had changed. People left meals by his garage now, cakes, letters, drawings from kids. Some came to ask questions, like he was some prophet of the stars. Others just stood outside in silent gratitude. He didn't have the heart to tell them. He was just as confused as they were. That night, under an unburdened sky, the town gathered at the remains of the tower. A silver crater now covered in wildflowers that shouldn't have bloomed yet. No one had planted them. They just grew. Sarai stood before them and spoke. Humans of Earth, she said, her voice clear and melodic. You were thought too small, too chaotic, too wild to survive the tides of war. But one of you chose to answer a cosmic horror not with fear, but with defiance. Not with weapons, but with signal. You broadcast a declaration. We are here. She turned toward Cal, and the stars listened. The crowd murmured. Some cheered softly. She continued. I cannot promise that this peace will last. Others will come. Curiosity is inevitable. But for the first time in many lifetimes, the galaxy believes Earth has a voice. Then she did something none of them expected. She knelt before Cal and bowed. Gasps filled the air. Kael'ren of Earth, she said solemnly. The Aethery recognize your spark. You carry the echo of the architects. When you are ready, the stars will be yours to shape. Cal blinked. I just want to fix engines. She smiled. And that may be exactly why you should shape them. He didn't know what to say. Didn't want to say anything. So he nodded. And somewhere behind him, a little girl in a space hoodie whispered to her mom, Is he a hero? Her mom answered, No, sweetie. He's human. Back at his garage, Cal sat alone that night. Sarai had left on a small Aethery cruiser that had grown from a seed stone the size of an apple. It sprouted like a flower, then unfolded into the sky, singing as it flew. Before she left, she'd handed him a shard of the tower's core. A key, she'd said, if Earth is threatened again, or if you ever wish to leave. Now, it sat on the workbench beside his old wrench. Two halves of the same life. He looked around the shop. Same cracked walls. Same creaky stool. But there was something new too. A shift in the air. A weight lifted. Cal turned on the radio. Static. Then music. From no known station. A lullaby of distant stars. A signal returned. He smiled. Somewhere out there, someone had heard him. And had answered. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the melody wash over him. Not as Kael'ren. Not as Earth's first voice. Just Cal. A human mechanic. Who saved the world? With hope. And a wrench. Title, The Echo and the Flame. 10 years later, Earth was no longer silent. Not because of war. Not because of invasion. But because of curiosity. The stars had come calling. Not in dreadnoughts or plunder ships, but in scouts and scholars, pilgrims and diplomats, artists and translators. They arrived not to rule, but to learn. And Earth, once dismissed as primitive, had become the most watched planet in the known galaxy. It started slowly. A few cautious emissaries. Questions wrapped in caution. Observations made from orbit. Then a ship, the Veil Rider, landed in Iceland with full planetary clearance. Its crew simply wanted to share songs. After that, the floodgates opened. The stars remembered Earth's 3-hour war. They remembered the mechanic who jammed a wrench into the gears of conquest. They remembered Cal, though the man himself had disappeared. Not from death, from choice. Some said he left with Seraya to join the Aethery as a wandering scholar, planting wisdom in forgotten corners of the void. Others believed he returned to the garage, hidden under holographic shielding and still fixed up rusted engines for passing ships, refusing all titles, refusing all fame. But his legacy wasn't in where he walked. It was in what came next. Earth didn't join the Galactic Assembly, not officially, but its influence seeped through culture and language. A phrase became viral among alien youth, repeated like a dare. Be human about it. It meant doing the hard thing without hesitation. It meant questioning orders, even sacred ones. It meant picking up a broken piece of something old and making it work again. The phrase started on a backwater comedy broadcast, then got adopted by a university on Zernal Prime. Soon, whole civilizations were debating the human method of improvisational resistance. The Alok, an ancient, crystalline hive mind, began incorporating jazz. The brutal Varn Dominion, once the most feared war clan in 5 galaxies, suffered its first civil rebellion after a single intercepted Earth transmission, the Apollo 11 moon landing. The rebels saw the quiet determination in Armstrong's voice and said, if they dared, why not us? A library ship in orbit of Theta 9 constructed a whole wing called the Cal Index, filled with blueprints, audio signals, and personal logs from Earth's digital history. A single mechanic's journal entry about fixing a carburetor on a bad day was recited in a royal hall on the planet Areshti as a parable of cosmic perseverance. Even the Arzul, originators of the original 3-hour invasion, had changed, or what remained of them. Their empire splintered. Their high strategist, the one who had authorized the Earth incident, was overthrown in shame. We underestimated them, he reportedly said in his final address. They did not defeat us with guns. They defeated us by being themselves. The ruins of the Arzul Tower in Briarton had become a monument, not one of war, but of warning. Across a ring of stone carved with alien script, one phrase stood above all others. Here, in 3 hours, a species spoke back. The monument emitted a pulse every year on the date of the event, a low, harmonious chime heard only by passing ships tuned to the right frequency. Those who heard it sometimes cried. Others felt emboldened. A few swore it helped them find their way home. Back on Earth, things slowly settled into a strange new normal. Hybrid tech blossomed. Grease monkeys worked beside gliding bioluminescent engineers. Kids learned math with alien fractals. Old-school truckers installed zero-point drives into their rigs just because they could. Politicians were still the same, of course, but even some of them started using the word spark when they talked about hope. In the town of Briarton, it never grew much. Didn't need to. But every year, on the anniversary, people gathered in the crater again. They'd light candles, tell stories, play Earth songs, and beam them into the stars, just in case someone was listening. One such evening, a young girl wandered from the crowd, drawn toward the edge of the field where a faint shimmer danced in the air. She touched it. It rippled. A doorway formed. On the other side, a man in overalls, sleeves rolled up, hands blackened with engine grease. He looked older, wiser, happier. She gasped. Are you him? The man blinked, smiled. Nah, he said with a wink. I'm just a guy who fixes things. But you... He held a finger to his lips. Behind him, a ship purred with alien light. An ethery bloom drive, coiled and ready. A journal lay open on the dash. Go tell your people, he said, stepping back through the shimmer. There's always someone out here. Watching, fixing, believing. The doorway faded, but the girl remembered. And later, when she stood before the Galactic Tribunal as Earth's first ambassador, and the ancient powers of the cosmos questioned humanity's place in the stars, she said just 6 words. We're the species that answer back. And silence followed. Reverent silence. Centuries passed. Empires rose. Stars shifted. But that story remained. And though Cal's name faded, recorded differently in different systems, blur by language, blur by time, the phrase endured. Carved into starships, etched onto coins, whispered by soldiers before battle, sung by lovers before sleep. Be human about it. Final line, legacy in the stars ending. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but one phrase remained whispered among the stars. Words spoken in defiance, in hope, in unbreakable will. Human, don't stop.